end of ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times, by means of Prajnaparamita, they awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering should be known as truth, since there is no deception. Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way. Teata om gate gate paragate parasangati bodhisoha. Thus Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Teata om gate gate paragate parasangati bodhisoha baba gonja zonji gae dembe doji je roba doji meba doji shewa doji jagi bachi metun beju donji jerin gorye zo ngerin donja jeju shewa da metun nube jendan jewa dan Dongpa Junjin Bunzun Zunjoji Yashi Lejan Denda Leleyo. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure land. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide.
you
I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Idam Guru Radha Mandala Ram Niradayami. Nanzo Ji Nam La Yanjo Badu Dani Jazu Ji Nagi Chinye Ji Pezo Nam Ji Rula Benji Zonye Rubar Yo Chedan Ji Jo Nam La Yanjo Badu Dani Jazu Ji Nagi Chinye Ji Pezo Nam Ji Rula Benji Zonye Rubar Yo Nyodan Ji Jo Nam La Yanjo Badu Dani Jazu Ji Nagi Jinye Ji Pezo Nam Ji Rola Benji Zonye Rubar Yo.
What I saw the Talon what the Madrid, but Talon Saji what the lodges of Shannon to be true, then the Luchitajan, but then Luchitajan, but the Tayutan La Hibbel and Bishopua, Hibberjet Lamsu. Tan Hibbel and Sweet La Jebichon, the Tomo lodges and but then Dream down, Tomo lodges and but Jebichimi lodges and but Son Le. Jebi Chungo the Tomo Laji Batala, Sambajan on the Sambati Jebi, Tela Ludusa was. Sambajan on the Jiden Shamatun, Lujibatan, Jiden Shamati, third temper. Nigan on Jiden Shamati, third temper, but Mada. Yeah.
So when we look at the Lama Tsong-kha-pa's great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, we begin with the instructions where we find relying upon the teacher, that is the root of the path, and then the second category of how students train their minds after having relied upon the teacher. So in the section that is how students train their minds after having relied upon the teacher, we find two categories: an exhortation to take advantage of a life of leisure and opportunity, and then how to take advantage of a life of leisure and opportunity. So then when we get to the section on how to, or the actual way to take advantage of a life of leisure and opportunity, begins with the practices of three capacities: training the mind in the stages of the past shared in common with beings of small capacity, training the mind in the stages of the past shared in common with beings of medium capacity, and then training the mind in the stages of the path for beings of great capacity. When we begin with the first topic of training the mind in the stage of the past shared in common with beings of small capacity, we find three categories. First, the developing that state of mind, or that actual mental state of a person of small capacity, the measure of that development of the state of mind, and then dispelling any kind of misconceptions related to the person of small capacity. So these are the three categories. And then beginning with that first category of developing the state of mind of a person of small capacity, we have two categories. First, developing a state of mind that strives diligently for the sake of future lives, and then second, relying on a means for achieving happiness in one's next life, or the method for this achievement. So this is where we begin with the method for this achievement.
Tanjide Shama, the third Tembatala, Temple Juvi, good, but Chandu Janwa, Delay Tanji saw Ishi Tebachi Bening and on Chandu Jan had to the Marbe, Chandu de la Chosun to Jo, Chosun to you, Chosun to Chosun Hajj Marbe, Jaganon Tal Hajj Marbe. Yeah.
So then when we get to the method for achieving happiness in one's next life, we find the two categories. And this is under the major category. In the text I said developing the state of mind of a person of small capacity. But in the text it says, I just had it. It's the same meaning, but developing the actual training of thought for a person of small capacity. So that's the heading in the translation here. So I just want to stay in format with the translation here. So when we get to this this point on the method for achieving happiness, we begin with 2 points. First, refuge, the entrance or the gateway into the instruction, and then the second point of developing faith and conviction in karma and its results. The first point, refuge, we find 4 categories that are made. The causes of refuge, based on that, the objects to which you go for refuge to, how to go for refuge, or the explanation of refuge, and then the precepts or advices related to refuge. So we've gone through the first 3 categories, and we're currently then dealing with the precepts of refuge or the advices related to refuge. So we begin on page 192 in the English, where we find the precepts of refuge. I think it's number 4. Once you have gone for refuge, the stages of the precepts.
다 동보 도알류 저를 하지들 지선이 란도 지선이는 다 지선 동보도 된 말에 지선 동보 제부 동보라 템바 제부 동보라 템바사 다 제부 동보라 템바사 출 퇴바 일을 셔봐 어떤 지기 이제 말봐 어디 다 간다 저를 하자서는 때 말봐 다 간다 저선 로차도 ane 자순주 라자 답나 자순주 당지 ane 제베 중의 도자 ane 든루투투고 말에 타바투투고 말에 사지고 투투고 말에 자순주 당지 투투고 말에 ane 자순주네 ane 어디 제베 중의 주된 그게다 딩기 주된 그게 제베 준비 주된 그게 된 우레스 제베 담발 된 버스 동부도 된 사마르바 호텔 마데나 안에 제베 중의 주된 그게 단 딩기 주된 그게 제베 주된 그게 매나 안에 든류 랑셰도 말에 타비 랑셰도 말에 사지 고봉도 랑셰도 말에 드마시나 든루 두고 말에 타바 두고 말에 사지 고봉도 말에 what something samarba yeah.
So we begin, it says, once you have gone for refuge, the stages of the precepts, the dua, the Papa Tome.
Dua, veje tome the menro.
Okay, so we find the stages of the precepts. It says the precepts are explained in 2 ways. First, how they appear in the compendium of determinations, and then secondly, how they appear in the oral tradition. So first, how they appear in the compendium of determinations. It says there are 2 sets of subdivisions. So we begin with the first set of subdivisions, which make for a total of 4. That are related to the first set related to the compendium of determinations. So here, if we look at the advice of going for refuge, if we want if in order for us to achieve any of the results, we have to follow the advice or the precepts found within the teachings shared in common with beings of small capacity. If we do not follow the advice given in the teachings shared in common with beings of small capacity, we can't achieve the results of those practices, which are the pathways that lead to the higher realms. We can't achieve the results of the next level of nirvana or liberation, and we can't achieve the results of complete Buddhahood. This is what this word advice means. So we find this advice for going for refuge. If you go for refuge, we advise you to do this. So the third category is how to go for refuge, or the explanation of going for refuge. And this next point is, if you go for refuge, the advice is this. So the points that are made are just like the advices given in the small scope that are indispensable to lead to any of the three different goals just mentioned. So then, at the beginning, in order to learn any of this information, it's necessary to have a teacher. And that's why we begin with reliance on excellent persons as in the first set of subdivisions, or relying on the best type of persons, the most excellent persons. And here, the reason this advice is given is if we wish to learn the pathways for beings of small capacity that lead to the higher realms, or the pathways for beings of medium capacity that lead to liberation, or the pathways of beings of great capacity that lead to Buddhahood, it's necessary for us to have a teacher give us this advice. It's necessary for a teacher to give us these instructions. Without the instructions on the pathways for beings of three capacities, it's not possible to achieve the result of the pathway for a being of small capacity of the higher realm rebirth. Without the instruction of a teacher, it's not possible to achieve the result of the pathway for the being of medium capacity, which is liberation. And it's not possible to achieve the result of the pathway of a being of great capacity, which is Buddhahood. So we start with the reliance on an excellent person. And this is referring to relying on a spiritual teacher, or translated most of the time as guru devotion. Better?
다 담보 사지 건조를 쪄서 하자들 제부 담발라 템바스 제세 담보 제부 담발라 템바네사 제세 담보 제부 하자 제그난 담보 제부 담발라 템바스 근들질 고고레스 제르무지 원데 송도와다 제부 담발라 템바네 하시바타르 신예 담바 예전 타제지 내수 손은 템바데사 하시바타 란지자와 신예 템베 가도 템주시 템바타 안에 워드르지 düğün tembe momuyor marşini de çıkardı momuyor o da tem gore son denizler nasıl tonne tembe de sa sanje la jiaosu son yu ne sanje la jiaosu son zanje tandu tutu mare taba tutu mare sanje gobon tutu mare o de gren ne ane 제비 총을 주 딩기 주 제비 주도 냐나 제나 던도 도도 그래 타바 도도 그래 사지고 모두 어떤 용거서라 와다 사지라 저서 손이나 라던바라 제비 총을 라던바 딩기 라던바 제비 집이 라던바라 저서지마 인라스 대다 제수 팀비 druba shawanes 대다 라던바 던바데 되게 던바 나지 던바데 제수 팀비 druba shawane landomba la ngosu temba imbeser landomba la ane ngosu temba shenye temba zadi jirota lesser temba imbeser what the tajisa tombe sir lesser yeah
so there are four subdivisions that we find in this first set related to the compendium of determinations. And the four are to rely on an excellent teacher, listen to the sublime teachings, fix your attention properly on them, and cultivate a practice that conforms with the teachings. So these are the four points that are made. And then this first point that states to rely on excellent persons is relating to guru devotion, or relying on a spiritual teacher. As previously explained, in the section of how to rely upon the teacher that is the root of the practice, You rely on excellent teachers when you see them the source of all good qualities. And in the section of relying on the teacher, the root of the path, we find all the various points that are made, how to rely on thought and practice, etc. Many points that are made in this section. And it says, for you have already gone to the Buddha for refuge and thereby uphold the teacher of the path as your refuge. So just by going for refuge itself, we are unable, just the act of refuge does not allow us to achieve a higher realm rebirth, does not allow us to achieve the liberation or nirvana, does not allow us to achieve complete Buddhahood. We must rely upon a teacher who will then show us the pathways which we are to engage in that the Buddha who is our refuge has taught. So here it says, the practice that conforms with this is actual reliance on the one who teaches the path to you. So here this is just showing once again reliance upon the spiritual teacher, the root of the path. And it says, see them as the source of all excellent qualities. So it's just going over what was previously stated and then showing how this reliance makes the actualization of the path possible.
What does he say? So
this is the meaning of the first point that states to rely on excellent persons.
타바 투투마 사지고 투투마 어디 잡고 이제로다 철라 저 소연에 담비 추nye 녀고레스 담비 추nye 봐 네 추진일 담비 추nye 봐 전에 배도 말에 추나데 네 려자당 콘르다 세당당 뜨모게 녀보 일하지 우르스 들 녀켄게 타바 드든지 로도 용도나 타바 드든지 로도 녀보 타바 드마에 비시비 네 산탄고바 나지 what 추 tö비 제스라네 안 되자그냐 마두고 고야 제당그냐 부샹바 고야 도무그냐 텐데 고야 돈이 고야로 수바 추지 일하시바 소딩서 말베 추지 일하시바 내사 담바 상제당 상제지 녀퇴지 시비 추 노들라 소바 제리스 녀진사 노들라 소바 제리스 녀진스 최녀바세야든 담바 상제당 다 상제가 소비 간주요로 간주 보던데바 있는 가서 보도 자마르베
맞아
아니 나래다 개바서 아니 텐주 보도 녀자도 좋어요 대나지 그 개바 당사 몸요아래 안자가 아니 소비 개바 당사 몸요아래 네 아마라가 자이다 어때가 치치 요즘 말에 어때 이제 돌려는 디그래 자이 돌려는 디기 가이 돌려는 쳐봐요 말이스 어때서 그걸로
맞아
로장지고야 손대서베
맞아
제바내사 담바 상제당 상제진에 되나지 시비 추 노들라 소바 제리스냐지 노들라 소바 손도 상제 가도 마되나 도도드는 뇌드는 나비드는 손드는 말베 나비드는 손드는 거다 네 주지 되는 손 주자 라바 손 네 상제 가들라 최진지 라바 도대한들 온드유드는 라그레스 띵은지 라바 도대하게 상제 가도 속으로 띵은지 도도드는
맞아
네 셔러지 라바 도대비 상제 가도 속으로 나비드는 말베
맞아
대나지 땡주어 잡은다 대나 제수 좀 이제로와
맞아
담바 상제당 상제진이 퇴지 시비 춘도들라 소바 제리스 녀지 되는 소부터 야부 녀고레스 말베 녀지 강일라 셔바 다 강일 되는 소부터 녀는 최성공선 최종 셔라다 상종 셔라다는 상당 말베 안에 녀네 일라시지 녀모도비 녀보 안 되샤가 녀보 모두가 고야
맞아
시당이 녀보 가서 샤바 고야 도무기 녀보 돈이 고알로 소바 어디 너무 두비 메바 힐라 셰바스 추트바다 힐라 셰바스 너무 두 메바 힐라 셰고레스 다 가데 너무 베냐부 공고 손데 인사래 너무 추트네 셰바제 셰타두 데네 추드 데나데 너무 베냐부 네부 냐솔 냐란 제고레스 셰바데 추라 자수 송유네 론던 두비 추라 모두 샤완제바 인라사 추라 자수 송유라데 니로다 아비 추트바다 추진이라 제바 니로데
Okay.
Yeah.
Tuchera.
Yeah.
Chuchayuma. Okay. Okay, so now, so we've finished the section on rely on excellent persons. And this deals, this is related to the Dharma jewel. The next section deals with the, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. We begin with the first section on rely on excellent persons, and this deals with the Buddha jewel. Advices related to the Buddha jewel. The next section deals with advices related to the Dharma jewel, and there are 2 points that are made. The 2 points that are made. First, listen to the sublime teachings, and then fix your attention properly on them. So here, we find the emphasis on the arisal of the various types of wisdom, the wisdom arisen from hearing, the wisdom arisen from contemplation, and then the final wisdom of meditation. But here we're speaking, Rinpoche mentioned specifically the wisdom arisen from listening and the wisdom arisen from contemplation. So here it's stating that you should listen to the sublime teachings. So here the sublime teachings are referring to those teachings that were explaining the 3 baskets, the Vinaya basket, the Sutra basket, and the Abhidharma basket. And these baskets are related to specific practices. The Vinaya basket related to the highest higher training in ethics, the Sutra basket related to the highest higher training in concentration, and the Abhidharma basket related to the highest higher training in wisdom. So here, when we summarize what the sublime teachings pith or essence is, we find that it's referring to those 3 baskets of instruction that instruct us on the 3 highest higher trainings categorically. There's, let's see. So here, we're listening to the sublime teachings and we're fixing our attention on them. So here I'll just start with reading, and there's a lot more commentary, and I think it'll pop out easier as we read it. You should listen to whatever is appropriate among the sutras and the like. So we'll begin there. The sutras here are the specific pronouncements of Lord Buddha that we find in the Kangjur, the pronouncements, and then it says, and the like. And the like is referring to any other explanations of those baskets that are given. So the like here could refer to the Tanjur, the authentic Indian commentaries, but also the various Tibetan commentaries, the various Mongolian commentaries, the various Chinese commentaries, or if they're in English language. So any of the, and the like is referring to those instructions in any of those languages which are explaining the sublime teachings. So sublime, and teachings which are sublime because the Buddha and the Buddha's disciples explained them. So here the Buddha and the Buddha's students explain what are those. Those are the 3 baskets of instruction that are found in the root sutras and their commentaries. It says, in addition, fix your attention on whatever serves to dispel the afflictions. So here, quite literally, it is the object of observation of your attention is that which dispels afflictions. So the object of your meditation, or the focal object, is an antidote of some sort to afflictions. So when we look at antidote, the word antidote, when we use the example of the rope and the snake, when someone walks into a room and believes that a rope is a snake, the only thing that serves as the antidote to that is that which directly opposes the mistaken view, and that is that it's a rope and not a snake. Likewise, when we look to have an antidote to the afflictions, we have to apply an appropriate antidote that dispels that affliction. So in the case, we have the various antidotes that the Buddha taught, for instance, related to the 3 poisons. If one has a negative a greater negativity with attachment, then meditation upon ugliness or impurity becomes the antidote to that. If one has a greater problem with aversion or hatred, then meditation upon love serves as an antidote to that. If one has a greater problem with ignorance or delusion, then meditation upon dependent origination, the nature of reality or emptiness, serves as an opponent or an antidote to them. So this is what is being spoken of, making one's object of observation the antidote to the afflictions, when whatever those specific afflictions and those afflictions' antidotes are. This is what is meant by that, and it says, in addition, fix your attention on whatever serves to dispel the afflictions, for you have already gone to the teaching for refuge, and you have thus undertaken to actualize both the verbal teachings and the teachings as they are realized. So here, this is the scriptural and realizational doctrines. So the verbal scriptural teachings, and as they are realized, those realizational doctrines. So this is speaking specifically to listening to the Dharma and then contemplating it, and what that Dharma one is contemplating is specifically. So that's the point that we're up to now. That's Gurum Che.
No.
This one.
This one. Chula Josu Sonya, the London to be Chungo to Shawa, Zeba Hilas. Chula Josu Sonya, London to be Chungo to Shawan, Zeba Hila, Tata, Jesu to be Druba Shawan, the Imbases. That Chula Josu Sonya, London to be Chu. Lonsana, so can you tell you to the Marve? Can you to the long road, the long Marve? Can you Sanji cut to the road? Long Chuko down, Sanji cut to G. To be Chuko, long to Jesus and Azuchi, long said all danger with that. Long down, to be chosen not to be true, to be Chuko in a Lamarve. Netujalanga, Rajajalanga, Shansajalanga, Sanjijalanga. They are Tanga, the Parangata, Parasanga, the Mediso, what the Langa the Marbe, to be true, want to show us. What to Sangalo, not to shy. Not to shower Zimbares. Tangazu Tony Resantaba in a tombo, Chera Jimbo 2, long, Chera Jimbo 2, and a tea and a Zola Soba Demo Madrubala, Santana, Tujung Shera, Tujung Shera, Sanjung Shera to Toba, and Tujung Shera, Sanjung Shera, Jebatsama. Chemodu, Sanjung Shera Marbe. Tell a minute thing as Gumbayina, thing as Gune, and a Shineta. Haton Tozona, and a Tolan Jolant Venomarbe, Jolaje. Tony Gosun Tozona, Jolan Tolant Venomarbe. Tengot Shower, Modishaw. Tolanta, Golanta, Molula Goso, Tony Lasotosugal, Mosun Togo, Modshaw.
Okay.
Teach to race.
That's so.
What the song he said?
Then the Long Demba Conjure Tanger, Long Chukor Conjure Kona.
Long said, long to be chosen, long said that, long Chukusana, Sanji Kaim Choro.
Okay.
Long Tembasana,
Tuche.
the Tenjinical Gondor.
Tuchena.
Yeah.
The June Lamungu. It says, for you have already gone to the teaching for refuge and have undertaken to actualize both the verbal teachings and the teachings as they are realized. So here we can divide these, the verbal teachings and as they are realized. So we have, we're going to call them the scriptural and realizational truths and doctrines, just for ease of language right now, and so I don't keep bouncing back and forth. So when we look at the verbal teachings, if we're speaking of scriptural truths or verbal truths, then we're speaking of the Kangjur, the pronouncements of Lord Buddha, and the authentic Indian commentaries, the Tanjur. When we're speaking of scriptural turning of the wheel of Dharma, we're specifically speaking of only the Buddha's pronouncements. If it is scriptural turning of the wheel of Dharma, it is necessarily Buddha's speech. When we're looking at those two differences, those are the differences. If it is turning of the wheel of Dharma, it's specifically meaning the Buddha. If it's scriptural truth, then it can refer to the commentaries and the root text. Now, when we get to the realizational doctrines, the realizational turning of the wheel of Dharma is necessarily path. So it's for any among the paths, here is solitary realizers, bodhisattvas, Buddhas within their continuums. So when we speak of various paths, we look at the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge, and we find the mantra within it that says Teata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhisoha. And this is implicitly referring to the various 5 paths of those 3 individuals here as solitary realizers and bodhisattvas: the path of accumulation, the path of preparation, the path of seeing, the path of meditation, and then the path of no more learning. Then Dupi Chukor.
Dupi Chukor Lai Michel Lang. Teatanga Ngadala Langrova.
Chukor Dan Demba.
Dupi Chukor Lai Michel. Lai and Dupi Chukor Michel. Tenji Jajundi. Dupi Temba Sana.
Oh, go down line. Okay,
Hasun Yanes, what the Roger Denison Chenya, Dupi Temple Hasun Yanes.
Let's so.
Habasun Yanes.
Let's so.
Habasun Yanes Jadule, Lang Gumata. Lamashu, Matsujulia, Habasun Yanes.
Let's so. So then, the scriptural, the realizational turning of the wheel is referring to those realizations of path within the continuums of those beings. For instance, those 5 paths. If we're looking at realizational truth, we're speaking of the 3 highest higher trainings of ethics, concentration, and wisdom. A slight differentiation there in the terms and the meanings of the terms. And it says, as they are realized. So here, as they are realized, is referring to the process of realization. So the process of first to listening to the sublime teaching. So if we're going to take, for instance, the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge as a topic. And within this, we find the explanations that when we hear the sublime teaching on it, or the explanation of the Heart Sutra, we find the explanation of that form is not truly established because it dependently originates. So when we hear this teaching and the explanation of it, this is the wisdom that is arisen from hearing. And this type of wisdom that arises, we would find at the path of accumulation, for instance, from hearing. And then, as one fixes his or her attention and begins to contemplate these teachings, and then starts to develop a union of calm abiding and special insight related to these teachings by contemplating on them, one then moves from this path of accumulation then to the path of preparation, and the 4 stages of the path of preparation, where one arrives at an inferential valid cognition we're speaking of this emptiness right now related to the Heart Sutra. One arrives at an inferential valid cognition of emptiness in these 4 stages of path of preparation. And then once one reaches the peak of that 4th state of inferential valid cognition that has a union of calm abiding and special insight, which has as its object of observation emptiness. And this has been brought about by a process of practice of single-pointed concentration as one passes through the accumulation to preparation. And then once one is at the last stage of preparation of inferential valid cognition, then he or she has a direct valid cognition of emptiness, a direct prime cognition of emptiness, and moves to the path of seeing. And everything from the path of seeing and meditation and no more learning, when we speak of the specific realizations, these realizations are direct, valid cognitions of emptiness at various levels that happen at the path of seeing up through to the path of no more learning. So this is the process of hearing the teachings and then contemplating the teachings, developing a single-pointed concentration, uniting calm abiding and special insight, and developing this inferential valid cognition of emptiness, and then transforming that into direct valid cognition, and then having those direct valid cognitions through the rest of the pathways related to that object of observation, in this case, emptiness. Okay. So now we're going on to the... so then let me just read this out. The practice that conforms with this teaching to and fixing the attention properly on the sublime teachings. So that completes the advices related to the Dharma jewel. Now we move on to the advices related to the Sangha jewel, or those aspiring to virtue. And as a note, if we look at the last line in this paragraph, you'll find those aspiring to virtue, why that term is important. Translators note. Okay, so when we get to this section that deals with the Sangha jewel, or those aspiring to virtue jewel, it begins with, you should practice in accordance with the teachings on nirvana. So here, the teachings here are referring to Dharma. This word teaching here is referring to Dharma, and when we divide Dharma, we divide it into true paths and true cessations. So the teachings on those true pathways and true cessations are that which the community, or those aspiring to virtue, engage in, and we practice in this way and take these persons on as spiritual friends in order to actualize things in the way that they have. So when we divide those aspiring to virtue jewel, or the Sangha jewel, we can divide it into three categories. The hearers, when we look at those aspiring to virtue jewel, and we look at the cessations and pathways, we can refer to those pathways and cessations within the continuums of the hearers, the solitary realizers, and the bodhisattvas. So here, and then the Buddhas. And then when we look at this word cessation, that Rinpoche said at the beginning, and I'll look it up at break, at the beginning of the Perfection of Wisdom text that divides these cessations into five. Those with remainder, those without remainder, full accomplishment, fully realized, and there's another two I just would like to look up and not spend time looking it up. But there are 5 different types of nirvana that are stated in the Perfection of Wisdom teachings. So hopefully we'll find those. So it says, you should practice in accordance with the teachings on nirvana. When you have gone to the community for refuge, you have thereby taken as companions persons who are on the path to nirvana. So you have taken on, when you take, it says, when you have gone to the community for refuge, when you go for refuge to those who are aspiring to virtue, you take on friends who are superiors on the path, superiors of the hearers, solitary realizers, and bodhisattva or Buddha superiors on the path. So here it says, you've taken these companions who are on this path to nirvana. So they are on this pathway which is leading to a cessation, or as a note, already achieved it. And then it says, the practice that accords with this teaching in the way of those who are intent upon in liberation. So then a translator's note, those who are aspiring to virtue, who are intent upon liberation. So it says, your practice of going for refuge to this Sangha jewel is for the point of having companions that are traversing this pathway that one wishes to traverse. So one looks at the Sangha as these companions who are on this pathway, which can aid us in our pathway because we have the same goal, which is nirvana. In the various nirvanas. Digson.
Yeah.
What this is.
Chuji Jesu Timbi Chuduba South, the Nukan Jugulaja Timbade. Chunyangal Devi Jesu Timba Drubates. Chuji Jesu Timbi Chuduba South, and Chunyangal Devi Jesu Timba Drubas. Tabatubi Cheto. Long Druba Chugures, Bomba Chugures, Ganula Josu Soyune, Nyandes Drebis, Ganila Josu Soyune. Nyande su drebi kanza la trusun seba yilas gani la chao sun la tele nyetu baba raja baba shansen baba tuso chu nyande su drebi kanza ro da tel tene trubu zuma su gogures dama parent.
So here, and it says, you should practice in accordance with the teachings on nirvana when you've gone to the community for refuge, thereby taken on companions or persons who are on the path to nirvana. So what type of persons are those aspiring to virtue? Those are those persons who are superiors of the hearer, solitary realizer, and bodhisattva vehicle, who are on a pathway which leads to a specific place, and that pathway is liberation or nirvana. So then it says you have thereby taken them on as companion persons. Rinpoche said it's dharma friends, spiritual friends. You have taken them on as friends who are on this pathway to nirvana. So the qualification is that these individuals are on a pathway to nirvana, and that these individuals are the superior individuals of the various vehicles. Decent.
Tata Jesu Timbi Druba Shawa ne Tabi Sheto Shuba Nada Tumba Luba Imbeja Luba Imbeja Jesu Good Mabra Chudata Jesu Timbi Druba Shawa Sayate Ganila Josu Tabatubi Cheto Shubas, Tabatubi Cheto Shubatane, Netu Baba, Raja Baba, Shansa Baba to Marba, Tabatubi Cheto, Shugure, Tabatubi Cheto Lagungo, Tabacheto Tobi Cheto Shuba, Nata, Timba said, Cosuton Timba, and Nazuyan Cheba Dele, Ganula Johnson Lawyers, what there is.
So we practice in accordance with those spiritual friends or companions that are the hearers, the superiors, solitary realizers superiors, and bodhisattva superiors, who are on a pathway that leads to liberation. Without relying upon this pathway, liberation isn't possible, or the cessation is not possible. Therefore, like those who are intent on liberation, those aspiring to virtue, the Sangha jewel, we follow in the same way. So because the pathway is the only thing that will lead to this goal, and these beings are on this pathway which we wish to engage in order to achieve the same goal, or to actualize what they are trying to actualize.
다 지선이 받는데 지선이 받도록 지선이 받을래 then open 먹어봤어. 다 가서 돈이 공부했나 땡에서 공부를 땡에서 좀 시험도 거반이요 말. 시험도 거반이. open 먹어봤어야 돼. 고발 고도 고바. 다 가서 돈이는 산다바이나 버잘 산다바이나 산 먹고 차비 오게 은 라반들 포도 고대야 돼. 고발하고 말이야. open 먹어봤어. 돈이 산다나 돈이 찌지도 공부로.
Lesser.
돈이 산 찌지 담비체. 버잘 되나라 산 찌지 담비체 될 산 마고 마데바제.
Lesser.
안 산데다 콘.
Lesser.
what 고발로 고발로.
Lesser. Okay.
open 먹어봐서 뭐 담비인 사마르바.
Okay, so the first, now we're in the second set of subdivisions related to the Compendium of Determinations. And it says, do not excite your sensory faculties. So here, excitement is one of the downfalls to single-pointed concentration. So excitement and dullness are the two downfalls, but we're specifically speaking of excitement. And excitement is when one is not able to fix one's attention on a focal object and is wandering to various other objects. So for instance, if one wishes to meditate upon emptiness, when one has a single-pointed concentration or fixed meditation, the point is to focus on only that object, which is emptiness, fixing it on one object. When one's mind strays to various other objects of observation off of the object of observation one is trying to focus on, then this becomes excitement and is an obstacle to single-pointed concentration. So this section is going to begin to deal with not exciting your sensory faculties, and specifically this word excitement Rinpoche drew to because this excitement is related to this busyness of mind, or losing the focal object and thinking of other things. Losing the object of focus and thinking of other things.
다 가서 버자 돈다리 산 당도 버자 돈다 두스마 산 당도 안에 지선 당보니 바도 산 당요들래 안에 산 저지도 마데 바지 산 제다 kunna on go basa go do marba sebu yom do na shwa le horda.
Okay.
But san to dada madena chabi on go jenda san go ba ina go ba marba go ba me ba tagal de de bala seba mena shwa le shwa to go ba what go ba.
So when and one thing I left out from before is the mind is straying to these objects and attaching to other objects than your focal object. So it's attaching to objects other than your focal object. So this is considered excitement. So we can look at this passage, these points, in various ways, but we're looking at this word excitement related to meditation right now, and how excitement is a hindrance. The opposite is dullness. And this is when the object of observation isn't clear in one's mind. It's clouded, or it's not a clear object. This is dullness. But when the object can't be held because of attachment to various other points, then this is excitement. And these are both obstacles to single-pointed concentration. So these are it's like the distinction between dullness and excitement.
다 가서 버자 된다 지시게 지시 내게 저거 산自己 当바 있나 어떻게 제공서 어떻게 말해 제공으로다 뒤에다 간데 이나 지게 시 내게 산다네 산다데 받을 제공 말해 제공.
Okay.
안에 저바 저온도 코트 간래 시처 안에 리바기 제바 시처로 그러다 어디 제공서에도 어디 인사 말해.
So here when we look at meditation itself, when the teacher is giving an instruction, and the student is listening to the instruction and then looking at the various points of the instruction that is being given, the point that's being given, then this is analytical meditation. By looking at this object that one has been taught by a teacher and listened to, and then takes this object and then looks at the object. The same is true for debate. When one is using an object and debating it or going over it in all the various ways. This is a analytical meditation. The process of debate is an analytical meditation or an analysis. So when the debate process is taking place, the chew mambo drop a mambo chemagar. Okay. So in the process of debate, we have a person who is asking a specific question of the person who is sitting down related to it, and then the person has to answer back correctly with about the specific topic and have a correct, hate to use the word analysis of what was presented, but has to correctly answer back what was presented based on his or her ability to answer it or learnings. And if the answer comes back incorrect, then there's an uproar of laughter and so forth. So there's a lot of emphasis on getting the information correct and really having clarity around the subject that is being presented by the questioner. So Rinpoche just said that there'll be a loud roar of laughter if it's answered incorrectly. So there's this pressure to really know the information correctly. So and by this process, it forces you. I'm just trying to get really what Rinpoche said clearly to really know the information properly.
But then
sometimes there's like harsh words that are given back, like you don't know what you're talking about and so forth. So Rinpoche just wanted to give you the feeling of it, So here, if you are not, now back to if your sensory faculties are excited by this, you won't be able to answer properly. You won't be able to give a correct answer if you are not, if you're overstimulated, your senses are by this process of debate, you won't be able to answer properly. So this ties it back into this.
So the
faults or the opponents to single-pointed concentration are excitement and dullness, and here we're speaking specifically of excitement.
JB Labije Genus Labosa. Dakan de Labije Otaba Labas Nibare, what Niba. What that is in Magaju Tutin Land and Diguare, and Guinea Pamidobaland and Diguare, Nian Dobaland and Diguare, Glumpama, and the Gatsupama, and then Shaju Sambi Dumba, Hagdumot, Karina and Diguare. Genus Labosa. So New Zealand languages.
Then the Hapas Yanger Death the Sutar Dumba, the Dumba
Chene Pami Dumba, Niene Dumba, Sodak Dumba Rota, Sonak Dubaland, Nuguduna, Sodak Dubaland, and then Shaju Sembe Dumbaland, Nebayuna, Dumbaland, Haduland, Nebayuna, then Susu Nibakazi Yuna, the lens.
Okay, so I'm just going to read the the English in the do not excite your sensory faculties. When the sensory faculties draw the inattentive mind to objects, you should view this excitement with regard to sensory objects as a fault and withdraw the mind from them. Take up the precepts correctly. So this is the second point that is made. You should take up the training set forth by the Buddha, as many as possible. Lapiji Yandapa. Lapiji Domba. Okay. Okay, decent. Okay, Selbodu. So here, Gonga Mebachi Rinpoche, it says you should take up the trainings set forth by the Buddha, as many as possible. So the trainings, the behaviors that were set forth. For instance, the Buddha set forth the ethics which abandons the 10 non-virtuous activities. He set forth, if one is able to, one could take any among the individual liberation vows, such as the one-day vow, the layperson vow for a female, layperson vow for a male, novice monk and nun vow, probationary monk vow, nun vow, and fully ordained monk and nun's vows. So any among these 8 types of individual liberation vows, or the bodhisattva vows, or the tantric vows. So the trainings that are being spoken of here are the actual disciplines that were set forth by the Buddha. And it says as many as possible. Decent. This is the second point. Now we're on to the third point. The Chutsu Jedang Karma Ngala is okay, so we'll take a short break, and Rinpoche said to hand out some cookies and so forth.
Yeah.
I unfortunately didn't find those 5, but I certainly will. Rinpoche told me where to find it exactly, so.
Before you get started, can I just ask one quick question?
Triwa Dirube.
Not to Rinpoche, it's just, I want clarification.
Okay.
The baskets. You had said that the basket. Oh, I'm sorry. The baskets were the I got the last one. Is wisdom. The Abhidharma is wisdom, but I didn't get the sutra or the Vinaya.
The Vinaya basket is related to ethics, the training in ethics. The Sutra basket is related to the training in concentration, and the Abhidharma basket is related to the training in wisdom.
Thank you.
The Dunu Sum, Flapa Sum, the Drawa Gare, Dui Dundun, Suchim, the Lhasa. Okay. Less so. Less so. Less so.
Jayu temba niji chaba du shebe tela chazu son yu tang seje la ni zawa she twa bumba us de son ba de doa jiba da tu du so ta sonje kunju 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 chaba ya be waris
so
chaba be so de je doa.
Okay. The Cherang Gari Ninji Sawa Shan
sonje temba niji zawa sonje temba de okay,
less so. Less so. Tuche. Tuche. So now it says, be compassionate toward living beings. So we've gone over the first 2. First of the second set of subdivisions according to the compendium of determinations. First, to not excite your sensory faculties. Secondly, to take up precepts correctly. And then third, be compassionate towards living beings. And here it says the conqueror's teaching is distinguished by compassion. So the root of the Buddha's teaching is compassion. So here it says, distinguished by compassion. The root of this teaching is compassion. Therefore, once you have gone to his teaching for refuge, you should also be compassionate toward living beings and forsake harming them. So here, this is the, because compassion is the root of the conqueror's teaching, once one as goes for refuge, the advice is not to harm a living being. This is the point made here. And then the next, strive to make periodic offerings to the 3 jewels. Here it says each day you should make offerings to the 3 jewels. So here when we offer our food, we offer our drink to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. This is what the Buddha jewel, Dharma jewel, Sangha jewel, this is what is referring to.
Jason Suzu Laja Dan, Jason Tomugulani, Tambulani, Gabi Laja, Drubi Lajani Redua, Gabi Laja, Drubi Laja, Gabi Laja, Drubi Lajani Redua, that Gabi Laja, Tatambu Gabi Laja ne, Nyangali Debale, Kanju, Nyande, no Nyande Sajuro, Sanji Kunyangal de Casmobari, Nyangali Debale, Kanji Sona Jandoa. Tene yanda genye des ngaji song la jando konju song la jiao sun ruwa de yanda genye se da nga so jiao song zumbi genye se na digo no ane genye la de jeri ji go na 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 ji shue bi genye na ga shue bi genye na ji na ga pe ji du shue dang chang shue dang jando genye na ba nga yin na zhu ne jue de dan de jiao song zumbi yanda genye se de komi genye se men ro a Yanda Gnetes, Takaji Consusola Josu Gente, Yanda Gneres, Nadula Nadon, Hanjenda la, Josu Swan Mainos, Tate Gabila Temanos, Hanji Consola Josu Son Yu, Nado, Hajenda la Josu Mares, Gabila Jirendo, Nado, Nadon, Hanji Consola Josu Son Yu, Nadon, La gente la, one should also put the Johnson to Maris, Han agenda la, Joseph Maino. You never had Joseph to Maris. Tambi Chula, John Roa, Session, Subi, Santa Dress. Chukunjula Joseph son you, and Sejel Nurse Bongos, Sejel never did you, Maris, Session Subi, Santa Dress. Non se bon adre loi gandu la John Roa meti jenda ruba mis meti jenda to jeju mare she somba daras ode tawud tajir mejin de she jilu na ma to ngaso remio she somba dar la jen la josu mon roa da se jen la non se bon la jen la josu mon roa de sanji konju la josu Johnson Roy, the Jidem Hajendal Johnson Roy Maris.
So,
Ryan Quid and the Jimbaye, Jidem like switch jobbers. Jidem Laconoso, call Kudiarangasuka Jotus. Johnson Roy Marijiberta. Sejel and Nursebon, Chukun Julius, Sejel never change Mare, Swaji Chude, Hijik Sawajere, Sejel Nursebon is the Lilla Johnson, Medi Gentan. Manduba son monza, Medijant Ruba Maris, son monza. While the Rutila, none of Jebashin Mare.
Tamoda Nipa Lasso.
Mengal Ju Laja needed, Susu Laja Dan, Tomung Laja, Susu Laja Sana, Sanju Conju Laja, Chu Conju Laja, the new Conju Laja, Susu, Sheba the Susu Laja. Tomung Laja Sana. Chukunju, Sungage, Tumunglaja.
That's how.
Sajini Redua.
J. Rinpoche Delpa, Nyanile de Delpa, the Sum, the Jiktemila Jansudro Mare, then Senchen Manu, then the Sumba Lasun.
The Sumba Madijan Mandubas, the Mariba. Madiba to Truji Maris.
Okay.
The Nila Josun.
Okay. Then they got.
Each of the Malu,
then they Garbi Lacha. They Kanga Garbi Lacha. Okay. So when we begin then with the precepts. So how they appear in the oral tradition, and there are two two differences: the special precepts and then general precepts, or precepts that are common to all. So specific precepts that are specific, and then general precepts that are common to all the jewels. So the special precepts, these are explained in terms of proscriptive and prescriptive precepts. So in terms of the positive and negative, or light, dark precepts. So here the prescriptive precepts, it begins with this. So this is the light or positive advices given. And it begins with a quote from the Great Final Nirvana Sutra that says, "Those who go to the three jewels for refuge come closer to the truly virtuous. They never go to other deities for refuge." So among there are 5 different types of spiritual teachers Rinpoche mentioned, and then the virtuous teachers, the refuge teachers, tantric teachers, etc. So here it says they never go to other deities for refuge. So here this is the advice of not going for deities such as Shiva and so forth, worldly gods for refuge once one takes refuge in the three jewels. So here is proscriptive, and sometimes it's considered the negative precepts and the positive, it's translated as, because this is what not to do and what to do. So just as another side note. So it says to go to other deities for refuge. Those who go to the sublime teachings for refuge harbor no harmful, murderous thoughts. Those who go to the community for refuge do not associate with non-Buddhist philosophers. So here, it's the points that are made relative to the 3 different things. Going for refuge. Okay, so the first stanza deals with the Buddha refuge, and then the second stanza deals with the Dharma and the Sangha, and specifically stating that one does not go for refuge to worldly gods other than the Buddhas, and then one does once one goes for refuge to the sublime teaching, then one should not harm other living beings. As stated before, that compassion is at the root of the practice. So one shouldn't harm any other beings or have murderous thoughts. And those who go to the community for refuge do not associate with non-Buddhist philosophers. And here, Rinpoche said bad friends also. The word bad friends can be inserted in there, negative acquaintances. It says, thus, there are 3 proscriptive precepts: not going to other deities for refuge, as just explained, abandoning harm and malice towards other living beings, and not befriending non-Buddhist philosophers, or not having negative friends, harmful friends. And then we'll get into the meaning of these.
Sanji Gonju la Jiao Song Yu, Jiden Belaja Jenda la Jiao Song Chu Maris.
Less so.
Tamboji. Chu la Jiao Song Yu, and Sejel Nurse Bongures, Sejel Nova Jeju Maris. Sanji Chu, Hiji Sawa Jen Yembe, and then Sejel Nurse Bongures, Niba Marva. Then the Gandula Jiao Song Yu, Drew Matiba to Drew Nebajivas. Matiba Dash. Pacha nyumba tu tenju tu nolo shuriba sadrwata shuriba chulu saba tu tenju tu nolo yomar wata metiba tu dil tranchen bata jampen bata ane jampen bata wate ane chebu bata ane wate reje bata wate suma tu tenju nolo yotra
Less so.
metiba tu ronde meji wate su injir wata
Then Trobo Shagamare.
Okay.
Less so. Okay, Tuchena. So here, the proscriptive precepts can be divided into in this case, the 3 white advices. So and related to the 3 jewels. So the advice related to the Buddha, here the first of the white advice is to not go for refuge to other deities, not go for refuge to worldly deities once one has gone for refuge. The second white advice related to the Dharma is once one goes for refuge to the Dharma, because at the root of the Dharma is compassion, one should not harm another living being. And then it says, those who go to the community for refuge do not associate with non-Buddhist philosophers. Now, when we look at what this is referring to, we go to the Kanjur, the Tanjur, the authentic Indian commentaries. At this time in India, we didn't have all of the newer religious traditions and so forth. So what the philosophies that they're specifically talking about are those philosophies such as the Samkhya school of philosophy, the enumerators, or the nihilists, or any among the Indian schools at the time that were being refuted. So this is speaking when we look at the commentaries about those ancient Indian systems of philosophy so those ancient Indian, and then I asked Rinpoche about this befriending or associated, and he said we'll get into what that means later, and later into the points.
J'ai jiwa de omara juba sentamba dudaba shirama dudama tuje ne shiriba kanga wo j'ai jiwa dale mai j'ai mi ni le mai so ni kale jiwa kele ngi jibu ma reba ni le mai jibu ba maramba jin
okay
jibu bas wo de jibu ba derwa
less so
jume me so de jambe ba ma reba jambe ba Jampen,
the Godan Yomai, Lei Yomai. Okay. So we find at the beginning of the Nagarjuna's root wisdom text, the point that is made that the things are not arisen from self, other, both, or causeless. So the point that's being made here negates various philosophical systems. And when we speak about the non-Buddhist philosophers, in this case, we're speaking of very specific traditions of philosophy that are negated. So when we look at Nagarjuna's point where he states things are not arisen from self, this is a negation of the Samkhya school, the enumerator's view. When we find that it is not arisen from others, this negates all non-Buddhist philosophies, as well as within the tenet systems of Buddhist philosophies, the middle way autonomy school view, the mind-only school view, the Sautrantika view, and the Sutra view, and the Great Exposition view. I'm sorry if I was doing Sanskrit and English at the same time. So it negates all the views below the middle way Prasangika view, which are the middle way autonomy, the mind-only school, the Sutra school, and the Great Exposition school, and then non-Buddhist philosophies. So things are not arisen from other. Things are not arisen from both negate the Jain view. The Jain view of philosophy, the naked wanderers tradition. And things are not causeless negate the nihilist view. The nihilist view that there is no karma, there is no cessation, there is no this, none of this exists, the nihilism. So this idea that things do not arise causelessly negates the nihilism, negates the nihilist view. So these non-Buddhist philosophers are speaking specifically about the assertions of these schools in this context. Less so. So it says these are the prescriptive precepts. So related to the Buddha, not going to other deities for refuge, not going to other worldly gods for refuge. related to the Dharma, because compassion is the root of the Dharma, abandoning harm and malice toward living beings. And then related to the Sangha, or those aspiring to virtue, not befriending non-Buddhist philosophers. What are these non-Buddhist philosophers? In this specific case, they're speaking of the enumerators in the Jain tradition and the nihilists and so forth.
So now Lamrim
Tsong-kha-pa will explain what all this means.
Chanjula soba la pochi, Josu Mazina sa. Jiden Bela Trabutan, Chanjula soba, Dugara wanted to say Jirota, the new Dilashan of Sejing, Lumen Tabutagi Tulasu, Sin Tipping Aruchedruba, Lombin Jen, Jijan Kankiko, Tomala Nimi Messaging, Zebachun Zebi Juvenci Kankishabi could be Tensheba, Toman Laila Shaselo, what Leshin Munguge, Jidem Latu Jirota. Jidem la trabutan, Chanjula Subatula, Kus Josun Digamaris, Son Yoris, Sanjik Sumbaris, Jidem la Trabo, Jidem la Nebach Tusula, Josun Digamaris Sumbaris, the Sumba in Sonda, and then as you lajeda, Eda Jubi, you lajeda la, and the Josun Canendo Maris. Yeda Zujibi Jida Danza Lola Soba, Lola Tajimensa. Tangazu can't about some of the song. You let you Kishari, had no lot the songs you put on the goes to Chogada, and the goes to Johnson Rotamon Shidan goes to Mare, you let to visit Johnson to do that. What the Jidel had about to Johnson on the Digamari Somba in Sonta, Yeda you let that so much of Yedaman. Eda Jibijida and Lola Suba, Lotundurota, Tajimens out the Tilchos and Digmaris.
So here it begins with not going for refuge to worldly deities. And at the beginning of Lama Tsongkhapa's Essence of Eloquence, it speaks of the worldly deities. It speaks of various deities, Shiva, Vishnu, Kama, Brahma, and it speaks of not going for refuge to them. Well, it speaks specifically. It says these deities who sparkle with all of their luster and shout out their greatness to the world, or their rule. They shout out that they rule over the world. At the sight of the Buddha, these sparkling diadems, or diadems, something like that, their lights go out like fireflies when the sun comes out. So their brightness weighs like fireflies when it's sunny, and they bow at the lotus feet of the Buddha. So this is at the beginning of the Essence of Eloquence by Lama Tsongkha-pa, where he states that these worldly deities who claim their rule over the world, who shine with all their luster, go out like fireflies in the sunlight at the sight of the Buddha and bow down at the Buddha's lotus feet. So this is related to that. And here we'll begin reading. It says, not going to other deities for refuge is explained as follows. Since you should not even hold worldly deities such as Rudra and Vishnu as your ultimate refuge, what need be said about Nagas and the local divinities who are hungry ghosts? So it's saying many of the local spirits are actually hungry ghosts. And if you shouldn't go to these worldly gods for refuge, then we shouldn't go for refuge then to Nagas or local spirits who are hungry ghosts lower than the human. So this is the point that's made here. Yidat Kasam.
Oh, the what the lot to talk on the something summer, but they are Josun la ye machines, Josun la Sanju can you can use against Vigi, you marry summer ye machine, the Dala Lungena Monoa ages. Imagine touch you but not to Latin to Sole Lungena, doesn't run a Monoa ages, the Dala Treje. Chudeji Shawanga Yigi, True Chua Zangla, Morua Mantesa. 단 예고를 비든 저선도는 디고 말마도는 하도를 다주는 로비제 루지스 안지상다야다 스진다야다 어떤지나 마로마게요 말스 저선도죠 말 손에서 말베
Side tone, okay.
야
So here it says, while it is improper to entrust yourself to these beings without full belief in the three jewels, so one has to have this faith of conviction, a full belief in the three jewels. It is proper to merely seek these beings' help for some temporary religious purpose, just as, for example, you would seek the help of a benefactor in acquiring the means of livelihood or consult a doctor for a cure of an illness. So here it talks about that we can ask, as long as we don't go for refuge to these beings, we can ask them to help us in our affairs. So we can offer them food, we can offer them drink for these purposes, but we can't entrust ourselves in a complete way by going for refuge to them, in going for full refuge for their protection, for the reasons previously stated. But we can ask them to aid us or help us for some temporary religious purpose, or if we need aid or help in some way.
다들 뭐저 손태야 저손라 이 마치네스 건축손라 이제 매버지 이 마치네 선지 건축 추구 저도 아유 이 마치네 된들 하도들 저손은 지금 말이스 말베 대야 건축손라 이 마치네스 다 나타버지게 선지 건축 추구 건축이 건축들 이 마치네
Less so?
안을 하진달 저손나 지금 말이스 뭐레스
Less so. Okay, so just to clarify this point, Rinpoche went back to, it says, while it is improper to entrust to these beings without full belief in the three jewels. So here, this full belief, this faith of conviction in the three jewels, we might not have. And if we don't have this full belief in the Buddha jewel, the Dharma jewel, and the Sangha jewel, if this full faith and belief isn't there, it's still not appropriate to go for refuge to other worldly deities. So even if we haven't arrived at this point of faith of conviction in the three jewels, it's not appropriate to go for refuge to worldly deities.
What should Mati Batu Garso, what the so consciously machine, what is the Trobat and Jeju Marmado, and then Shirba to the Trobajan and River, Shirba, Tanjaba, the Jeba, the Trobajan, Susu Nambage, Chandru Nagumuduna, Trobajan and Rizamar.
Less so.
That is not Chulu Saba Yishu to Yishu. And because I hate one Namadu.
Less so.
Yishu, and Mazilian to Kadaina.
Less so.
That issue, Pana. Jason Amal, then what he machine Johnson Digmaris. Then issue battle Trobajan and Digro, Trobajan, Suzuki, Nambak sound to Nagamaduna, and John Nabi Lama on the Toshudre, and the issue Abaragake Lama Toba to the Gope Trobajan. Could sell Nogo Manuko Trobajan. Nami Chun Lecha Mamala land, issue Chuko, without Chanore, issue Chunole, Loje Mabalane, Nachul Pendu, Jamon Majeda, the issue Lama Mudrosh.
So when we look at this point that's made, it says if we haven't developed this faith and conviction in the Buddha jewel, the Dharma jewel, and the Sangha jewel, it's not appropriate then to go for refuge still to other worldly gods or deities. But when we speak about this point about befriending or associating non-Buddhist philosophers, it is not said that we cannot be friends with a numerator or a nihilist or a Jain, or now now we have Christianity, and also other ancient traditions of the Hindu tradition, the Muslim tradition, etc. It's not saying we cannot be friends with these individuals. It's saying if these individuals harm our refuge, then we should not befriend them. If they in some way harm our practice of going for refuge or try to move us away or try to harm, will harm our going for refuge, we don't have faith and conviction, then it's not someone that we should befriend if they're are harming us in some way or harming our refuge. But we find in the case of the Dalai Lama, who has many Christian friends and has said many times that we should look at other religious traditions and look at how they can enhance our practice of Buddhism. So the Dalai Lama is the greatest scholar of Buddhism, and he himself befriends many non-Buddhist philosophers. So this has to be interpreted in a clear fashion, and it's related to refuge, not losing refuge. And if someone is going to harm our going for refuge, then we can't befriend them, because that's our where we are. So this is the point that's being made. So we can befriend any of these different traditions. We just, as long as they're not going to harm us in some way. So if we have our own religion and conviction, then we can go to anyone else and talk with them. So if, though, we don't have a firm, really able refuge, this firm, able refuge, then we can be harmed by the views of the enumerators and these other schools of philosophy that could then influence and harm our refuge and our refuge's ability. So this is the point that's made. So here it's very similar to if we have the practices of love, compassion, and the mind that aspires to enlightenment, then activities that we engage in are enhanced by these realizations. Just like the wind, when there's a very large fire, enhances and brings that fire up. But if it's a very small fire, the wind blows it out. Likewise, if we have these realizations, then actually our study and looking at these other traditions and befriending other traditions enhances our practice, whereas if it's not very able, it can harm it. So you find that all of the religious traditions really like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the Hindus and the Christian tradition, etc. Everyone really likes His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So the Dalai Lama's excellent qualities are enhanced and increased by other religious traditions. So it just depends on Rinpoche said, the individual's abilities. So this is the way we should think about it. Maybe this is the best way to think about it. So it's not a benefit. It says not going to other deities for refuge is explained as follows. Since you should not even hold worldly deities such as Rudra and Vishnu as your ultimate refuge, what need be said about Nagas and the local divinities who are hungry ghosts? So it's not appropriate to go for refuge to the Nagas and local spirits and so forth. So while it is improper to, we should not go for refuge to these worldly deities. And then we find this from the great Final Nirvana Sutra, where the quote states to never go to other deities for refuge. And then it says, while it is improper to trust yourself to these beings without full belief in the three refuges. So one should not, even if he or she has not the faith of conviction in the three jewels of refuge, go for refuge to other deities. It is proper to merely seek these beings' help for temporary religious purpose. So just as, for example, you'd seek the help of a benefactor in acquiring their means of livelihood, or consult a doctor for the cure of an illness. So we can go to beings such as Shiva and ask for help. We just can't put our full protection in their care, go for complete refuge to them. But we can say going for refuge isn't appropriate, but we can say, can you please help me? So then there's an example that's given. So here, then it says, just for example, you would seek the help of a benefactor in acquiring the means of livelihood. You would ask for help from a benefactor to be able to buy food and be able to buy drinks if one needed to. And it says, so you would ask for help from a benefactor, or so you would look at asking a worldly deity for help in this way, the way you would ask for help from a benefactor, or ask for help. It says, or consult a doctor for the cure of an illness. So one would go to a doctor if he or she had tuberculosis or cancer, and then ask for help and consult them. So it's very similar to these. These are two examples that are similar to how we would view our relationship with worldly deities. So for the Tibetans, we have, this is important in the Tibetan tradition because we have many local deities and spirits and so forth that have been passed down from the Bon tradition of Buddhism in Tibet, where there are many local spirits and worship and so forth. So this is particularly important within the Tibet because of the worship of various spirits and so forth. Local deities we have to think they do have a power for that specific area. So we would think of local deities and having some kind of abilities related to that area that they are in, local to. So this is the clarification by J. Rinpoche of what the prescriptive precept or the what to refrain from related to the Buddha jewel is, refraining from going for refuge to worldly deities. So this is J. Rinpoche making it clear what this is referring to. So if this is what we should rely on, because if we rely on many other things, then we're going to mistake it. We're going to get it wrong. So we should rely on this instead of all these other things, which will make us mistake it and get it wrong.
Tondula Subasa, Dibatan, Chursugi Sadatan, Chenwatan, Tabak Hayata.
Less of rope.
And the Gora Shubasata, Kakaji the Madashuat in the Marbe, Gora Shubatan, Hambu was that. Hambu was an Asu Yatan, but you to the Hambu, the Nukus Tigro. What in Hambu was meditation to give us. Then do teach about the kid. Come machu now what in the Jeju Mas was in no no. Gewala Suba, Gewala Suba, Samba Danju, Samba Danjua, Senjela Neba Dantawa Bomba was a nurse upon said or the Rigil Gores, ancient to have a low.
Dendri less sobo. That's good. Menda, they got.
Gurash was in Madakan Kakajin, Mandashu de Adamar, Gurash was good, Gubas, Sequin, then Shinano, then Mandashu de Gurash was.
Lay in wait. In Tsong-kha and Kakare.
That Tsong-kha, that the Sorindo, Jim Badan to Soka Tabak Jin Daya to Lua.
Less.
Jacob Chin and also my shit to Maro. What the Lijiba in the Kusajan and Nunu. Chinwatan, Tabi Chinwatan, Gurashu was Kakajin Gun, say at the Namar.
Medan Dendru Sopa La. Tepa? Depa?
Debas and Deba, natural soaking does the Debas with the Marbe.
Okay.
Jobashu in the Duze.
Depa? Chinwa? Top.
Debas and the Chinwatan Tabak.
Okay. Kora?
Gurashu was a secret in the Ganshuana to Marbet. Gurashu was dance.
New.
Nambo.
Boba. Oh, the nose. Nah, ale.
Nambo.
Okay, so the second prescriptive precept entails refraining from harming or injury to living beings through thought or deed. So through harming or doing any harm to living beings. And then this could be humans and non-human beings, animals and so forth. This includes actions such as beating, so beating or hitting. Binding is tying one up with a rope, for instance. Imprisoning, putting someone in jail, or nose piercing, like the way that the animal, the cow, has its nose pierced through and is led by that. Overburdening animals, putting too heavy of a load on an animal. And this imprisoning, Rinpoche said, laying in wait also. Laying in wait, like hiding in a forest with a gun. So he made that example. I'd have to go, I'm going back and forth with the Tibetan and the English, but Rinpoche made that point, so I want to make sure I make that point. And if it's in these words, I apologize. So laying in wait, hiding with a gun or something in a forest to harm something. Overburdening animals and so forth. So the point to this is that do not harm a sentient being. So this is related to the Dharma jewel, the third. Now we're going to deal with related to the Sangha jewel. So it says the third prescriptive precept entails not agreeing with those who do not believe in the three jewels as a refuge and who repudiate them or who disrespect them. So here, if someone does not have the faith or conviction in the three jewels as refuge, one should not agree with them. And if someone who disrespects them, one should not agree in this way. But this isn't speaking about befriending specific, being a friend, it's agreeing with, and then what was explained before. So it says the third prescriptive precept entails not agreeing with those who do not believe in the three jewels as a refuge and who repudiate them. Not being swayed. So here, we shouldn't agree with someone who doesn't have faith and conviction in the three jewels, but we shouldn't not be friends with them for that because they haven't developed this faith and conviction in the three jewels. This is specifically talking about not agreeing with their stance, not being swayed by their stance.
What the name is about? Yeah.
To Chenrezig.
Yeah.
So we're out of time, and I'll try to remember for next week the five types of teachers and the five cessations. I'll find those in the texts. I apologize for anything that I left out, and let's do the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayers. To Chenrezig Sheda Sobudu. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure land. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the Gurus of 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness, all-powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khenso Wandok, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, the spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Tuji Rinpoche Guzi Shapi Denroma. That's Lamrim Chenmo Khan Trianan.